So our next speaker is Sarah Smith, and I apologize, in the agendas that are printed, they have Sarah name. I forgot to actually remove that word name and put your last name. It got left behind. So it's Sarah Smith, and she's the policy analyst for policy and interagency affairs at the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada. And she's going to speak to me about a program called Dimensions. So her talk is Dimensions, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Canada. And so please, everybody, just join me in welcoming Sarah, who's going to talk to us about this very interesting program that I didn't know existed and may exist on your campuses, and you may not be aware of it. Take it away, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Cynthia. So, hi, everyone. As Cynthia mentioned, I'm going to talk to you about a program called Dimensions. And the agenda today is to give you an idea of what it is, how did we get to the point that we're at right now. I'm going to go over the Charter of Principles, which is a big component of the Dimensions program with you. I'll talk a little bit about our letter of intent selection process, which is a process that we use to select institutions to participate in this program, which is actually a pilot program. And then I'll let you know which institutions to select, what progress we've made to date, and what the proposed implementation timelines are. So before I get started, I just wondered, are people familiar with this Dimensions program at all, or is this brand new to everybody?
Sorry, I just unmuted you to get rid of the feedback. Yes,
oh, yeah, I heard some.
It came to me for members who heard about it, but I think there's only 3 CAAL members who are actually participating in it, but it's not actually the library specifically, it's the campus in general. So even those in those libraries didn't realize that it was actually occurring on their campuses. So I would say this is pretty much all brand new information for us.
Okay, perfect. So Dimensions is a tri-agency initiative. So for those of you that are not familiar with the funding model of the Canadian government, we have 3 federal funding agencies that provide funding for research in Canada. We have the CIHR, which funds health research. We have NSERC, which is the agency that I work for that funds science and engineering research. And then we have SSHRC, which funds social science and humanities research. So this Dimensions program is an initiative that we are all a part of. However, NSERC is leading the program. And it's all done under the coordination of the Canada Research Coordinating Committee as well. So the program was launched in May of 2019, and it's a voluntary program with no funding attached to it. And it sort of consists of 2 main parts. The first part is the Charter of Principles that I mentioned on the previous slide. And the second part is this pilot program for recognition awards. So as I say, the awards will have no funding attached to them. So they're almost more of a certification program or a recognition award. So it took a little while to come up with a name for this new program. And so I'll just read you what this slide says. Dimensions recognizes that a multiplicity of perspectives, lived experiences, and the overall complexity of diverse individuals foster increased research excellence, innovation, and creativity within the post-secondary sector. This program takes a multidimensional approach to equity, diversity, and inclusion to achieve a future research community where all can thrive. And so you may notice that it mentions research a lot, and because the program is run by federal funding agencies, it's sort of our jurisdiction to be involved in research in the post-secondary sector. However, we kind of are defining the research community as including faculty, staff, students, postdocs, etc. So I would say that that would include libraries as well. So while our main entry point is through the research area, we kind of hope that all these changes that this program will bring will be a cultural change to the whole institution, and so that it would benefit everybody that's part of the institution. So a little bit of background on this program. So in budget 2018, the federal budget, there were many new measures introduced that were part of a larger push for gender equality. And EDI in research, so EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion in research is part of a larger trend to instill new principles in Canadian society. And there were a few specific things in the budget that were mandated for us to implement. And so one of them, as the first bullet says there, research institutions will receive support to advance equality and diversity through the adoption of the Athena Swan program. So you may or may not have heard of this Athena Swan program, but it is a program that originated in the UK, and it's been around for quite a few years now. But it's a program that's meant to improve the situation for women in STEM fields at their higher education institutions. So in the budget, we were specifically told to implement a program like Athena Swan, but we are adapting it for the Canadian context and for Canadian realities. So it's based on Athena Swan, but we're making changes to it. And a similar program that was also introduced in Budget 2018 is EDI capacity building grants, which you may have heard of. So there is some funding as well available to, I think the first round was only available to smaller institutions in Canada, but there was actually funding available to advance your EDI activities in your institution. So the two programs are separate, but they're complementary. And so Athena Swan has, as I mentioned, it began in the United Kingdom, but it has been implemented in several other countries, such as Ireland, Australia, the United States, and now Canada. And so the names of the programs are, you can see them on the slide. SAGE runs the program in Australia, Sea Change in the United States, and in Canada, it's run by the federal government, which is a bit different. The other countries, it's not through their governments that run it. So we have, in the other countries, institutions have to pay to be part of these programs, whereas in Canada, we have funding from the federal government to run this pilot, which is actually a 5-year pilot beginning in 2018. So the first step in establishing what this program would look like was to do consultations. So we had consultations with our international partners, particularly Athena Swan, but also the other countries that have already implemented the program. We also did 2 thorough rounds of consultations across Canada in the fall of 2018 and winter of 2019, where we got a lot of information about how Canadian institutions felt that the program should be implemented. And then once we did all these consultations, that's when we kind of created the Charter of Principles, which you'll see shortly, and we launched the program in May of 2019. And after the program was launched, that's when we put out this call for institutions that wanted to be part of the pilot and to test out this new program with us. Okay. So the Dimensions program is a little bit different from Athena Swan and the other models in that it has a much broader scope. So, for example, we are including all post-secondary institutions in Canada. So it's not just universities, for example, but also includes colleges and cégeps and polytechniques. So we're trying to include any post-secondary institution. It also includes all underrepresented groups. So the program that began in the UK was only targeted towards women initially. I believe now they also have a race charter as well. But we have opened it up to any underrepresented group. So we have specifically named 5 groups that are specifically identified as being part of the Dimensions program. And those groups are women, Indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities, members of visible minority/racialized groups, and members of LGBTQ2+ communities. However, we are not limiting it to that. So if an institution, while they're working on this Dimensions program, finds that there's another group that is underrepresented at their university or disadvantaged, then they can include action plans for that type of group as well. Like, for example, it could be people that are first generation attendees of post-secondary institutions, or I think there were some that might have different issues related to age or things like that. So anything else that an institution feels is relevant to their environment, they could include as well. As well, we are including all academic disciplines. So again, in the UK, it started off with just STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. But we have opened it up to sciences, engineering, humanities, health, any type of discipline that your institution is involved with. So here's a list of the charter principles. These are condensed versions of the 8 principles. If you were to Google Dimensions, you can find there's quite a bit of information on our website, and you can see the full text of all these principles. But basically, I've kind of shortened them a little bit here so you can get the idea of what the principles are. So the first one is that everyone has the greatest potential to thrive when everyone has equitable access. So that could be to funding, to jobs, to progression through academia, etc. The second one is that specific actions are needed to counter barriers, biases, and inequities. The third is that both qualitative and quantitative data are needed. So a big part of the Dimensions program is actually collecting data so you can assess what your institution needs to do, and so that you'll be able to show progress at a later date. Number 4, research excellence is heightened when EDI is integral. Number 5, contributing to reconciliation requires ongoing engagement with Indigenous peoples regarding research with, by, or impacting them. Number 6, shared responsibility, as was mentioned, I think, in the earlier presentation as well. EDI work is a shared responsibility, and it requires commitment from senior leadership as well. Number 7, safety, trust, belonging, privacy, and power differentials must be recognized and addressed. And number 8, you must have institutional collaboration, transparency, and sharing. So these are the fundamental principles of the Dimensions program. And any institution or organization in Canada that feels that these principles apply to them can sign this charter. And it would be, as we mentioned, that you need commitment from senior leadership. It's the president or equivalent of your university or of your institution, excuse me, that would sign on to commit your institution to these principles. And so we've already had 116 charter endorsements to date since the program launched. And that represents approximately 1 in 3 post-secondary institutions. And that includes 72 universities, 19 colleges, 1 polytechnique, and 16 other types of organizations. So there are various, like for example, Canadian Association of Physicists or things like that, various other types of groups that have signed on to the charter as well. And then just last week, there was a big event at the National Research Council, NRC, and they signed the charter along with 7 other federal government agencies. So we're starting to see signatures from the government as well. And we have representation from across the country. So every province has a certain number of charter endorsers. And as I say, it's 1 in 3 post-secondary institutions, but if you look at universities alone, 76% of them have signed it so far. Okay. So, as I said, the Dimensions program consists of 2 parts. One is the charter, which is sort of open for any institution that wants to sign it and commit to those principles. And you can find a list of everybody that has signed it on our website as well. And then part 2 is the being able to apply for an award that recognizes your work on EDI, your institution's work. And so because this is a pilot program, we wanted to just have a limited number of institutions involved for now. And then hopefully if the program is successful, eventually it would become open to everybody. So we had 40 institutions across Canada apply, and we had a selection committee that consisted of 11 members, 7 of whom were EDI experts, and 4 were agency representatives like government agency representatives who were involved in EDI within their agencies. So they selected 17 institutions to participate in the program. But one of their recommendations was that we shouldn't leave behind those other 23 institutions who had applied. So they really felt very, very strongly that those institutions should remain involved in some way. So what we've done is we've invited them to participate as what we call affiliate organizations. So our 17 that were initially selected, we call them the cohort. And then we have these 23 affiliate institutions, and all 23 of them agreed to to continue to participate. So you'll see a slide in a few moments which kind of distinguishes the cohort and the affiliates. And the 17 members in the cohort consist of 12 universities and 5 colleges. And then on the slide, you'll see there's just a little bit of information about how these institutions were actually selected. So they were, like, we didn't pick the people who were the most advanced at EDI. We picked a variety of institutions in order to have a good test for the pilot. So we picked different types of institutions, different sizes, different geographic locations, and different stages of progress in their EDI work. And some of the things that the committee really valued when they were discussing which ones they should pick were robustness of commitment and readiness, an institution's ability to share inward and outward. So a big part of this Dimensions program is collaborating with other institutions. We don't want everybody to be working in silos. We want them to be able to learn from each other and work together. Honesty and self-reflection is another big component of the program. Some of the questions, as you know, that you'll be asking yourselves are hard questions, and being honest about what your data is telling you and what you need to do to try to have a culture change that increases EDI in your institution. And finally, impact on community. So this slide gives you an idea of what the different levels of participation in the pilot are. So the cohort, they're going to be the only institutions that can apply for an award in the first round, but then the affiliates will be able to apply and then hopefully eventually be open to a broader pool of applicants.
Sarah, there's a question in the room. I'm just wondering if you might take that question right now.
Sure, why not? Yes.
Hi, Sarah. My name is Suzanne Van Hogan. I'm at St. Mary's University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I just have a question, and you're probably going to answer it, I think, as we're progressing here. But I'm just wondering, do you need to be the recipient of a CIHR, SSHRC, or NSERC award in order to apply for one of these awards?
That's a good question, and the answer is no. So these are going to be institutional awards. So it's not going. It wouldn't be an individual person that would have funding, like a researcher or something like that applying. It would be your institution applying as an organization. And so no, there's no requirement to have any federal funding. And I know sometimes people get a little bit confused as well. Well, I mentioned earlier the EDI capacity building grants that we have as well. It's the two programs complement each other, but they are not like, you don't need to have an EDI capacity building grant in order to participate in Dimensions, or if you do have one, it doesn't make you ineligible to participate in Dimensions and that kind of thing. So does that answer your question?
Yes. Sorry, we're muted in the room so we don't get the echo online.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And the cohorts are also working with the team members here at NSERC and the other agencies to help co-develop the handbook, which is that we call it the handbook, which is basically how we're defining the program. So they're working with us to co-develop it. It's not just us dictating how the program will run. And then our affiliates will have early access to the handbook. Our cohort has a dedicated Dimensions team member assigned to them. So there's myself and another policy analyst here. We each are responsible for half of the cohort. So we have individual calls with them sometimes, etc. And then we've been doing several workshops and info sessions. We've kind of got some of those going, and we will expect to have more. So our cohort will attend those, and our affiliates, for the most part, won't be able to attend those as it's just a little bit too many people, but we'll give them access to the workshop materials. We will be planning to go do some on-site visits for our cohort institutions, but while we're there, we will probably have regional meetings where the affiliates can join into portions of the meetings as well. Both the cohort and the affiliates have a website where we can share documents and things with them, and then there's a discussion mechanism on those websites as well, although we haven't quite got that up and running yet. And then the cohort has access to each other's contact details so that they can be encouraged to communicate with each other and work on things together. And they've shared their letter of intents with each other. And we are hoping to eventually match our cohort institutions with foreign institutions who have already been through applying for these awards in various other countries so that they can learn from that process. And then in the middle of this diagram, you can see we're having an in-person meeting it's actually on March 25th. So both the cohort and the affiliates will be coming in person to have a full day meeting, which I think is going to be a really great way for everybody to interact and try to get the ideas a bit more advanced. And eventually, we're hoping to have a wider community of practice beyond just the cohort and affiliates. And here's a map showing you who all of the cohort institutions are. You can also find this list on our website. So it kind of shows you that they're distributed across the country. And if you prefer to see it in a table form, it's here as well. So you can see the 5 colleges and then some large universities and some smaller or medium universities. And there are a few institutions from out east where you are. And the list of affiliate institutions is not actually public right now, but there are several institutions from out east that are part of the affiliate group as well. So what has been done to date? So after the LOI process, we prepared individual feedback for each institution based on the selection committee's comments, etc. So feedback for them to help them proceed with their work. We've been continuing to receive charter endorsements, as I already talked about. We renewed our Dimensions webpage so that it's pretty easy to navigate now. So if you're interested in this program, it's pretty easy to find the information on our webpage. We've also, I mentioned we did 2 rounds of consultation. So there's a report for each of those rounds of consultation, and there's a report on the LOI process. So those are all available publicly. In terms of governance, we have, there's a committee we call ACIDIP, which is Advisory Committee on EDI Policy. They're sort of our formal governance committee, and they're the same committee that advises the Canada Research Chairs program, if you're familiar with that program. And we also have a program design expert committee, which the PDEC, which consists of some of the members that were on the LOI committee, as well as a couple of new members. And we're kind of using them a little bit more on a more day-to-day basis to help consult on the handbook that we're developing and the decisions that we're making with regards to the program. We've been having webinars with the cohort and individual calls with each institution. And as I mentioned, we're developing the cohort, the handbook with the cohort. And then I think this is the last slide, which just gives you an idea of what the timelines for this program are. So we have the in-person meeting coming up, and then we'll be doing site visits and regional meetings somewhere between the spring, summer, or fall. Workshops are ongoing, and then the cohort will be able to actually apply for these recognition awards in summer of 2021. And then those will be peer-reviewed, awards issued in the months after that. And then the second round of applications, which is going to be for the affiliates, will be in summer of 2022. So it just gives you an idea of what's coming up. And we have a general Dimensions email address. So if you have any specific questions that you think of later on, you can feel free to contact us. And if you have any questions right now, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
So I've unmuted us here in the room. So does anybody have any questions here in the room that they wanted to ask? So I do have one question, Sarah. So are there minimum requirements for applying to become chartered, I guess, or is there things we should be doing at our institutions so that we can potentially move towards this designation?
Right. So at the moment, any institution can sign the charter if you want to publicly agree to commit to these principles. But in terms of, so if you're thinking like at the moment, only the people who are part of the pilot are going to be able to apply for awards during this period of the pilot. But so is your question like, what would you do in the meantime if you were eventually hoping to apply for such an award? Or
Yeah, if we wanted to work towards getting an award, what would you suggest we do here in our institutions?
yeah, okay. So I guess so, you know, I think Dalhousie is actually part of the affiliate group. So, you know, you could, I guess it would be good to get in touch with the people who are running that program at your, or, you know, that are involved in the Dimensions program at your institution. And because you don't want to be starting from scratch, and they probably already have some resources that could help you. Like if you're thinking of implementing them within your library, let's say you're trying to implement EDI policies, then I think like learning from other institutions that have already implemented things, or finding out what's already going on at your institution and maybe ensuring that it's extended to your libraries. I guess that kind of thing. I'm trying to think, like we have shared various resources with our cohort, and we will be shortly with our affiliates as well. So, you know, if you can get access to some of those things, they may help you as well. And I think just, you know, just participating in sessions like you're having today are important, because they just help you. The more you attend these types of sessions, the more you learn about EDI. And I think it's a slow process, but the more you hear about it, the more you kind of, it becomes more part of your culture.
This is live? Good. My name is Melissa Helwig. I work at Dalhousie University, and I'm really excited about Dimensions just as a long-term follower of the Athena Swan movement and the SAGR guidelines. So for me, seeing this in a library setting, I'm thinking about how can I better support my researchers and build capacity in EDI researchers or faculty that are going to be doing research in this area, or just their own research in any type of discipline. So as I'm reviewing the documents, that's kind of the lens that I'm thinking about. I didn't know if that context might help you with thinking about, you know, the questions we might have in the room.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure that helps. And I mean, obviously the library is a good resource for people. And if do you participate in advising researchers at all? Or?
Yes, every day, all day.
Yeah. So that's
grant preparation and things like that, but definitely putting the EDI lens on things.
Yes, absolutely. And most, you know, a lot of, I mean, I know at NSERC, our grant programs are requiring grant applications to include certain information about EDI, and researchers are also being required to consider if EDI in their actual research matters, not just diversity in their research team, but EDI in their research itself, etc. So yes, and the more knowledgeable advice you can give, I guess, from the library's point of view, it's for sure valuable. But as I said earlier, like, I hope that this program kind of eventually over time impacts the entire institution. You know, which includes the libraries, of course.
Sarah, just a quick question, because you mentioned the affiliates and you mentioned the DALs and affiliate.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm trying not to get too much feedback on the line, so I'm going to speak quietly. So I guess, is it possible for you to send me a list? You said they're not posted online, so it would be useful for us to post it. So never mind. I just been told to post it.
Yeah. I could do that. I think we just initially didn't really want to kind of post it to say, well, these are the people that applied that didn't actually get selected, type of thing. So that's why it wasn't really posted. But they are still involved as affiliates. And if I can actually tell you who the ones out east are, if you want. We have Cape Breton, Dalhousie, Nova Scotia Community College, and Nova Scotia College of Art and Design.
So one of the things I discovered when I talked to, let's say, Holland and UNB and Mount St. Vincent is they themselves in the libraries didn't know a lot about the program because it really hadn't been advertised yet internally as much. So for those of you that are affiliates, you might want to contact your EDI offices or whatever to see how the library could engage in this process.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think, the program is still kind of just getting rolling. It's sort of a slow, I know we kicked it off in May, but we only really began interacting with our cohort in the fall. So it's still just getting going. And I hope that eventually the communication will be such that everybody will know about it and be aware of what activities are taking place.
So there was a comment in the room that it looks like all of our institutions have actually endorsed the charter.
Okay,
Because they all have grants.
They all have charter?
They don't have what?
Sorry, you said all of the people in your institution have endorsed the charter?
Yeah, they don't all have affiliate status, but they've all endorsed the charter.
Okay, great. That's great. So, at least that means that your institution has committed to implementing these principles.
Is there any questions that anybody else has in the room or online for Sarah? I think we've got a lot to digest. I think it's mostly just the awareness that this program exists and
Right.
that some of our campuses are more involved than others, but we're all assignees to the charter. So it's useful for us to think about how we can engage with our larger institutional engagement in this program as the libraries.
Yeah, for sure. And, engagement is a portion of the application process as well, that institutions are going to be required to demonstrate that they have an engagement strategy, which would include engagement across their institution as well as externally, et cetera. So I think and hope that the engagement will increase as we go along.
So the ones that sign the charter, do you have contacts, institutional contacts for them that might make it easier for our libraries to connect with those groups in our campuses?
So I do, but they're generally the president.
Okay, because it's for some, it may not be obvious which group on campus is the one leading they've signed under the charter, but somebody has had to be the signatory, and knowing that might be to make that connection might be.
Yes, I definitely do have a signatory for each one. So if somebody needs to know that, they can contact me. And for anybody that's involved with one of the affiliate institutions, I should also give you the contacts for the dimensions contacts for those people, or either the affiliates or the cohort. There are specific people assigned for those.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. I'm not seeing any other questions here in the room, and our online group has been pretty quiet today, so I'm not seeing anything there. But I want to thank you very much for talking to us about this program, because we, as the person who actually brought this to my attention indicated, and from talking with the 3 participating institutions, we're not all necessarily aware of these things that happen at the larger institutional level. So it's great to know that this program is occurring and that we can, as the libraries, engage with our greater institution in advancing this for everybody.
Absolutely.
And if anybody has any questions, I will pass on your contact information so that they can connect with you directly.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you all, and thank you, Sarah.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Really a lot of feedback.